Hey, what's up guys, it's Ryan, and this is going to be my first After Effects tutorial on this channel. Today, this is going to be, as you can see from the title, a basics of After Effects tutorial. I'm going to run through really quickly the basic tools and the basic settings and layouts and how After Effects works. And also be showing you guys a quick tutorial on rendering, but I won't go into rendering in too deep of a detail. I'll save that for another video because it'll take way too long to explain everything as well as rendering. So basically I'm going to be showing you importing, doing basic edits, and basically how After Effects works, and then a little bit of rendering tips. But also you guys should check out my channel at youtube.com/maniac-edits. I only have, that's Maniac Edits, it's spelled correctly, no weird characters, just Maniac Edits. I'll put the link in the description. It's just, I have a couple videos on there from what I do with editing and video editing with Call of Duty and like montages and stuff like that. I'm going to be uploading more of my old stuff to that channel so you guys can check it out and let me know if you want any tutorials on how to do some of the effects I do in those videos. So go check that out and let me know if you have any specific requests. But right now, let's get into the basics of After Effects. So when you open up After Effects without dropping a video into it like I just did, you're going to get a window that says recent files or like new composition. You're going to click new composition and it's going to bring you to this little window. You can hit cancel or you can hit OK. If you hit OK, just click this button right here, this X, and we're going to start fresh. So if you want to import a video, you go to File, Import File. It's really simple. And you find your video and you click it and you click open. But I have my video in here right now, so I'm going to show you how to play around with this video and preview it and get it into a timeline where you can edit it. So the way After Effects works is it works with compositions. Now before I show you all this, make sure you have your workspace set to all panels and make sure you have window preview open, so window preview, and you have this composition window open, so window composition comp 1. That's what it should say. But the way After Effects works, as I was saying, is through compositions. And each composition is like a timeline or a compilation of clips that you can edit. So when you get more advanced at After Effects, you can start working with multiple compositions, and that'll be it for another day. I'll teach you guys that later if you don't know what that is already. But basically, you want to start out with your video. Once you import your video, you want to drag it right here into this little icon. It's the icon right next to the number 8 BPC. So that might be a different number for you guys, I'm not sure, but just drag it right into this like icon right here. It's the composition button. And what that will do is, if we go into composition settings, like you first did when you opened up After Effects, you can see that the settings of this composition or this timeline, that's what a composition basically is, it's a timeline, or a compilation of video layers. It'll set it to the exact settings of your video, so you don't have to manually set it. It'll detect what frame rate you have and what resolution you have and what aspect ratio and the exact time of your video. Now most likely you're going to be working with more than one clip, so if your clip's 7 seconds long, you won't be able to add another clip into this timeline unless you extend the timeline manually. So if I typed a 2 right here next to the 7, that would be 27 seconds. If I typed a 5, that's on the other side of this semicolon, that would be a 5 minutes and 27.28 second video. Okay, so now I can work with a bunch of clips because I have a 5-minute timeline. And when you do that, you can see over here how your timeline extends, and you can drag this little bar and scroll all the way over to the end. But you don't want to be so focused on one clip all the time. So what you can do is use the zoom and the zoom out, the zoom in and the zoom out buttons right here. If you use the zoom out button, your timeline shrinks down so you can see more of it. It's still the same length, or still the same distance, but it shows it at less spread intervals, so you can see more of it. But right now I do want to focus on one clip, so I'm going to zoom in. And the major thing that people always have questions about in After Effects is how to preview the video, because it seems so obvious. You actually don't just click this play button. You have to create a video RAM preview of your video before you can actually watch it or preview it. Otherwise it'll be really slow, skippy, and there won't be any sounds. So what I want you guys to do right here is find this button. It's the resolution menu, and you should click third. Now what you're doing is you're viewing the video in a third of its quality. This will only affect the quality of the preview video, not the final render. So don't worry. Next, you want to go to the resolution drop-down menu in the preview window up here. This preview window for you guys might be anywhere on this side, but it should be on this side. If not, click window and preview. Make sure it's checked. So what you want to do is make sure this is set to third also. And another thing you really want to do is set the skip to 1. This skips every other frame, but adjusts the speed so it plays exactly how your video should, but it takes half the time to render. So it's not messing with your video, it's not messing with your final render, it's just making a quicker preview time. So what you want to do now to actually watch your video is there's a button right here called RAM Preview. Now you want to hold Shift and click that. And when you do that, it'll start rendering out a little preview of your video. But since you have all these settings, it'll be really quick. So right here, if I shift and click, you can see it rendering out this little preview. And once it's done rendering out, it'll play fully. So it'll play with sound too. Now I'm not sure if you guys heard that, but it actually played with sound, and it played in real time. So that's how you actually preview a video in After Effects. You have to do that every time. It's kind of annoying, but that's how After Effects works, and that's how it runs efficiently like that. The more effects you put on a video, the longer it will take to render. So yeah, that's basically it. Now, to actually edit your clip, there is several things you can do for basic editing. One is this little drop-down menu, is the transform effects. So these are basic things like the anchor point, which is where your video will rotate off of. If your anchor point is down here, your video will rotate off of that point as if it was stuck on that point, and it rotates around it. So since my anchor point's in the middle, my rotation rotates around the middle like that. Okay, you can play around with your anchor point and see what happens, but I'm not going to show it to you. The position is pretty obvious. It changes the position. You can use these values manually, or you can actually click on your video and drag it and watch these values change down there. So these are really good for transitions and all that. Also, you can choose the opacity, which is another good tool. And if you notice these little stopwatches next to every effect, right here, these are keyframing buttons. Keyframing will be for another video. That's more advanced editing. It's basically animating it's animating each one. Keyframes are animations. So it can make it move over time or change opacity over time, stuff like that. Next is the audio drop-down menu. You can see the waveform if you click on the waveform button, obviously. And what you can also do is adjust the audio level to make it higher or lower. Now, -48 actually isn't the lowest you can go. You can go all the way to like -152. And -48, you can actually, I think you can actually hear the sound still when it's at -48. So if you really want to get the sound all the way down, go past -48. But you have to type it manually. You can't just go to -48 and then drag. You have to type it manually. It's kind of weird, but that's how it is. And don't worry if your thing says 0 decibels is not actually zero sound, as you can see from the sound waves or the waveform. 0 decibels is just the base level of sound. It's just a neutral level where you can go higher or lower from. And that's about it for the basic editing. One more thing, I want to show you guys how to cut a video. There's two ways to cut a video in After Effects. One is you can cut a video by splitting the layer in two, or you can cut a layer by shrinking it down. So if I wanted to cut this layer to 2 seconds, I could either do this, which is shrinking it down. I go to the end of the video and I click and drag. Now you notice you're going to skip right over this little indicator. If you want to cut right at the indicator, click down, hold Shift, and then drag, and it'll snap right on the indicator. It's a very useful tool. But yeah, that's the first way, is shrinking your video down like that. The second way is actually cutting. So if you go to Edit, Split Layer, you split your layer in two right at the indicator. So now you have 2 layers. And this is another thing that After Effects uses that many of you might not be familiar with. It's layers. You probably actually are familiar with layers. You've been working with Photoshop. So basically layers are, the one on top has priority over the one on bottom. So if I drag this on top, notice there's a guy up here. If I drag this layer on top, the guy will not be there anymore because this layer has priority. So this is a good way of making people like disappear and reappear and stuff like that, but it's also just a basic editing tool. Layers, the top layer will show over the bottom layer, and if you turn the opacity down, you can start to see the bottom layer. So right here, I can start to see the bottom layer. I can see like two guys at once right here. It's kind of cool for like ghosting effects and all that, but that's not what I'm going to show you guys today. The final thing I'm going to show you guys is just the effects menu right here. You guys can go ahead and play around with these effects. I'm not going to show you them all today, that's for next time. But yeah, go ahead and play around with these and see what you can do. The last thing I'm going to show you guys is a really quick render tutorial. So to render, you gotta first make sure your composition is trimmed down exactly to where your video is. So what you want to do is zoom all the way out and find this yellow bar. This is the work area end. Now you need to drag this and hold shift all the way down to your last clip. So wherever your last clip is, that should end right where your last clip ends, unless you want the screen to go black for a little bit. But I recommend just ending it your work area right where your last clip ends. Now this is pretty much, I think of this as the render area. This will render only this and none of this black space over here. It will render only your clips. So now we can go to composition, add to render queue, and this is kind of confusing over here. There's render settings and there's output module. First, you want to choose where you're saving the file to. So you click output to and then choose where you're saving it to. Okay? Don't mess with these formats or anything like that. What you want to do is go to here to mess with formats. Render settings, I usually use for Mac. I leave these on, okay? Just leave all these on. And don't touch anything in here unless you want to adjust your frame rate. But don't touch anything in here, okay? You want to go to output module. Now this is where you really want to mess with stuff. For Mac, you can use H.264. I'm not sure if you can do that on Windows. For Windows, you could do WMV, Windows Media Video Player, whatever. I think that renders out with the same quality. If you want a really large video, go with QuickTime, but H.264 and WMV I think are the best formats. So with H.264, make sure you guys have to make sure audio output is checked. That's a major thing. Make sure audio output is checked. Sorry, I just got a message. Make sure audio output is checked in this window so your audio will actually render out. Now you can go to format options and make sure, since your video should be 60 frames per second if it's HD, whatever it is, make sure it matches this. If your video is 30, make sure this is 30. Level and stuff like that, I don't really mess with that too much. You can choose a higher level. I'm not sure exactly what it does. But yeah, you want to have a 4.1 or above, that's what I know. And make sure all these settings match your composition settings and you'll be good. So you click OK. You click OK here. Don't mess with the audio unless you really know what you're doing. But this is fine for now. This audio is perfectly fine. So make sure audio is checked, hit OK. And what you can do is you can go ahead and hit render. I'm not going to do that because it's going to slow my computer down and probably mess up my recording. But anyways, it'll render out, and then you can go watch it. You can go find your video on your computer and go watch it. It'll be perfectly fine. You shouldn't lose any quality if you do the right render settings. I'll be doing a tutorial on render settings soon, but most likely only for the Mac because I don't have some of the codecs that Windows has. So if you have a Mac and you want render settings tutorials, just put a comment below. But guys, this has been the basics of After Effects. If you have any questions that I didn't cover, just comment below and I'll let you know. One last thing is I'm not going to cover all these tools up here because I rarely use these buttons up here. I usually use the toolbar up here. And I never use these things, just in case you guys are wondering. I never use this info or this audio. I never use that. I always edit my things through the drop-down menus. So yeah, the only useful thing that I haven't really showed you guys is the text window, which is right here. It's the paragraph and character window. You can type and make type layers with that. But yeah, next time I'll be covering how to use multiple layers and put effects on multiple layers. So I'll see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.